Welcome to another episode of Seahawks Forever, powered by BetUS. And why is this guy behind me, Quinn Ewers, Texas quarterback? Well, if you've watched the show for any length of time, you've heard me talk about this, but I have had a strong feeling for the last 2 years that John Schneider may have an affinity for Ewers and that he might be the type of quarterback he would consider taking to break a streak of not drafting a quarterback since 2018 and only drafting 2 in his time as general manager. Why do I feel that way? Well, that feeling became even stronger today with some new information coming out of the scouting combine in Indianapolis. We're going to connect the dots for you here today, and I'll include some sound from Schneider from 2 years ago, from today, some quotes he made to local media, what those might mean, and why I believe the road from Texas to Seattle may have gotten even shorter for Quinn Ewers. And he just might be the guy that Schneider is targeting to potentially succeed Geno Smith and maybe be the Seahawks franchise quarterback at some point in the future. Like it or not, we're going to talk about Quinn Ewers as a Seattle Seahawk coming up next.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
This deal still applies. Get over to BetUS and sign up for a new account today. They'll give you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits, up to $2,000. You can cash in on that deal by heading over to BetUS and using the promo code YouTube150. This episode also brought to you by the folks at Doer, built for doing, the best lifestyle apparel I've ever experienced. Hoodies, jackets, shirts, high-quality T-shirts. They specialize in breathable, antibacterial, sustainable materials. And this right here, to me, is their franchise landmark. These stretch performance jeans are a go-to for me. 20% stretch. They're light. They're comfortable. They stretch with you, but they're also durable and tough. Doer is built for doing. And right now you can get 20% off your first order for being a viewer or listener to this program. Head over to shopdoer.com/forever to cash in on that deal. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/forever for 20% off your first order. Doer is built for doing. All right, you guys, welcome back. It is officially time for the NFL Scouting Combine. It kicked off today with some press conferences, GMs and head coaches getting behind the podium today and tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll hear from Mike McDonald. Got to hear from Pete Carroll today as well. And it was Schneider's turn behind the podium. And some enlightening things from him for certain. Actually, some of the more important things he said came off of the podium when local media members were able to kind of surround him, corner him a little bit, and go a little deeper than in the limited time that he was given behind the podium. And it led me right back to where I started 2 years ago, thinking that this connection may be legitimate. I'm going to get into that today. I know you may have seen the shorter video that I did yesterday when this stuff first came up. Promised you I'd do a deeper dive. We're going to do that today. Before we do, subscribe to the channel. Of course, hit that bell for notification of future episodes, and all the other ways you can support the channel are listed down below on the YouTube channel. If you're an audio podcast fan, subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a rating or a review. Really helps the channel. Would really appreciate that. Combine time, the players start to they get weighed and measured, and all that stuff happens on Wednesday, and that's when the kickers and punters work out, if you're interested in that. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the positional workouts. And of course, I'll be all over that, lining up some really cool guests to help me break that down and give some analysis on what they're seeing on the field there. If you didn't catch it yesterday, my live stream with Bryce Coots of the Hawk Zone Rundown, we gave our watch lists of guys that we want to see something from at the combine to supplement what we've seen from these prospects as we watch tape that we think might be Seahawk fits, but maybe we need to see just a little bit more. And that's where the combine does come in handy. You know, it's true what they say. You can't put too much stock in what you see at the quote unquote underwear Olympics, but it is just additional data, additional information, and all of that gets put into the pot, stirred up. And what comes out the other end is your draft grade and where they fit on the board and whether or not they're going to end up being Seahawks in the future. So Schneider and Ewers, I've felt this way for 2 years. And the reason is this. I want to take you back to 2023, about this time of year, April, obviously. The Seahawks had just finished their first draft since trading Russell Wilson. So they had the 2 first-round picks, number 5 and number 20. And, of course, they had just taken Devin Witherspoon at 5 and Jackson Smith-Njigba at number 20. And they come out after the round and they do their post-draft press conferences. Schneider and Carroll sitting side by side, kind of breaking down what happened that day. And I'm going to play you a clip here from a Q&A with the local media. And what the voice you're going to hear is Hugh Millen, former UW quarterback, former longtime NFL quarterback, and a guy that ever since then has been an analyst on KJR Sports Radio in Seattle. He asks a question about the Smith-Njigba selection and references C.J. Stroud. Watch and listen to Schneider's answer.
And a follow-up to that, C.J. Stroud said that Jackson has the best route running of any receiver he's ever thrown to in his life. What did you guys see on tape that warrants that type of comment?
Yeah, C.J. would say that. Quinn Ewers would say that. Quinn left Texas. Yeah, I mean, those guys, he's got a lot of power in his lower body, a ton of body control, elite hands, really good eyes. Yeah, I mean, he's
now, in the moment, I remember watching that live, and it perked my ears up. I just thought that was, Ewers had just finished his first year as a starter at Texas. He was being talked about as a potential first-round pick. Remember, he was, I think it was 247, the scouting service. He was the highest-rated prospect they ever graded. He had a perfect score on 24/7. So obviously a 5-star recruit coming out of Texas, went to Ohio State as a freshman, but he's behind C.J. Stroud. I think Kyle McCord was there at the time or was coming in. And he transferred out after his first year, went to Ohio State. So he had just finished his first year as a starter there. So we're talking about, Schneider referencing not only a guy who didn't play at Ohio State when they were there watching JSN, but wasn't there anymore. Why would he unprompted bring up his name? It wasn't necessary to answer the question, except that he was making the point that, it wasn't just Stroud that said that. Other people say it too. I get that. But he was just, the fact that he mentioned Ewers tells me that he was in his consciousness. I don't know that it's that common for Schneider to be looking 3 years ahead at potential quarterbacks. Now, I know these scouting departments do that, but I just thought it was odd at the time, right? Now, fast forward to today when, again, off podium, Greg Bell, Tacoma News Tribune, friend of the show, we'll have him on again soon, asked him for the second year in a row what the plan is at the quarterback position moving forward, long term. Whether or not you extend Geno, bring him back, cut him, whatever. And Schneider gave him a little bit more of an answer than he typically does, saying that he wants the draft board to speak to him and kind of fall his way, and that just hadn't happened in the 3 or 4 years since they traded Russell Wilson. Now, we've talked about this before. I'm certainly not the first person to say this, but I truly believe, I think most of us do, that when that trade was made, they fully anticipated using some of the draft capital that they got back in the Wilson trade with Denver on a young quarterback. But they really kind of had a mixture of misfortune that they weren't drafting high enough to get the best guys, and that those particular drafts were very top heavy on quarterback and then fell off a cliff and there was nothing left afterwards. It just hasn't worked out for them, right? We hear John say every year, I learned from Ron Wolf coming up in my time in Green Bay that you draft a quarterback every single year and you hit on some of them. And if you don't hit on them, You can use them as trade bait. Green Bay did that for a long time. It'd be interesting to go back and see what the return was for all the quarterbacks they traded away that were backups, that were stuck behind Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers, Mark Brunell. Oh shoot. I'm I'm totally blanking on a couple others. Ty Detmer was one. But there were 3 or 4 guys that they were able to trade and get draft capital for. Matt Hasselbeck certainly came to the Seahawks here when Mike Holmgren was hired. So it's something that was part of their process, part of their draft strategy. One year they drafted 2 quarterbacks in the same draft. The year they drafted Matt Flynn. Well, I don't have this in front of me. Jeff Brom. See, now I'm just making stuff up. This is what happens when you riff live, right? But this one might be a little bit different. I think this year may be different. First of all, because we have the contractual situation with Geno Smith. And again, Schneider reiterated today that Geno is a guy that they want to be here, actually referred to him as our guy. And even offered and volunteered the fact in response to Greg's question that conversations are going to start with his agent soon, and actually said that they'll talk while he's in Indianapolis. He did say we're going to have to do what's best for the team. So, Geno Smith wants to get paid, obviously. The Seahawks have a number. This is the way Schneider operates at all positions, has forever, a number that they're comfortable with. They're not willing to go over it. So it may take some creativity on both sides. But because of Geno's advancing age, the fact that he is in the last year of a deal, the fact that if they don't do anything with the deal, it's a $44 million cap hit, and then he has a roster bonus of $16 million due on March 16th, there's a deadline coming. There's some urgency there. And so you have to start thinking about what's next. That's why they made the move for Sam Howell last year. It really didn't cost him that much for a guy who had started 17 games and threw for a bunch of yards and had some upside. They took a shot at him. We still don't know, as much as some of you think you do, because of the second half he played in Green Bay and played poorly, but was given done no favors by his offensive play caller. As much as we think we do, we don't know if Sam Howell can be a starter in this league or not. We don't know how they feel about him, how Clint Kubiak might feel about him, and Andrew Janocko and some of the guys on that offensive staff. We don't know that. We might think we do, but we don't. But I've been saying for a long time, like the best path for this team, if they want to win and win now, is to improve the offensive line, improve the offensive coaching staff. I think they've done that clearly this offseason with all the experience they brought in. Try to build an ecosystem that's more sustainable, whether that's Geno Smith so he can succeed and do what he does best, which is throw the ball down the field, but also set up a situation where it's a healthy environment to plug a young quarterback into at some point. It's getting to that point where he has to start drafting quarterbacks. And that's what I've been saying. You keep Geno Smith and just start taking guys every single year. I don't care if it's in the second round or the 7th. Start taking bites at the apple. What also makes it different to me this year, a little bit, is that this draft isn't so top heavy. Don't listen to people that say this draft sucks. This QB draft is terrible. I just don't buy that. 2022, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Sam Howell. Yeah, that was a terrible class. Pickett only went in the first round because the Steelers were desperate to find somebody and there was nobody else. I believe, from everything I've watched, for people I've talked to, people like Bryce Coots, who coaches quarterbacks, people like Bruce freaking Feldman, who came on this show and told us what scouts and other coaches say about some of the guys in this class. Max Brown came on the show and said some of the same things, that you may not like some of the quarterbacks in this class, and you may buy into the narrative that it's not a very good group. I challenge you to maybe look outside of that point of view, because and realize in doing so, nobody, virtually nobody, comes out of college ready to dominate in the NFL. Ready in all aspects. Physically ready, mentally ready. Remember what Kirk Cousins said to Rich Eisen last year on his show? He didn't feel like he could capably process at an NFL level until year 5. Think about that for a second. And so when you say, Jackson Dart can't get to his third read, you don't know that. You don't know what he's being asked to do. You don't know what the play call is. And so when I look at these guys, I take the Pete Carroll view of player development. Tell me what a guy can do, right? I want my coaches to tell me what they think they can get out of a guy. There are more players in this QB class later in the draft that you can see a future for. Everything has to be right. It's got to be the right spot, the right fit, the right timing, the right coaching staff. I mean, that's usually the case with these guys, right? But the comparison I would make is in 2022, I don't think there's anything. There's no situation you could have dropped Kenny Pickett into that would have made him a good starting quarterback in the NFL. There's no situation you could have dropped Matt Corral or Malik Willis into that made him a good starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, Sam Howell got a shot, started 17 games, but Eric Bieniemy was like, we're just going to throw it 70 times a game and just go shotgun the whole time and not try to run the football. That's not a great environment for a young quarterback. And maybe some of those bad habits he learned and maybe some damage was done, right? And that's kind of what we saw when he came here and he didn't live up to expectations. But I would argue that for the first time in years, there are opportunities in every single one of the 7 rounds to get a guy that, if everything goes right, can be a good starter in this league. I think you can say that about Will Howard, Jackson Dart, Kyle McCord, Quinn Ewers, Tyler Shuck, maybe Jalen Milroe, although he is a much, much, much longer term project in my mind. But they're guys that you can squint and you can see a good future. It's just the boom or bust potential is pretty significant. And so I think that set the stage for the fact that, I think Schneider is going to take a shot on a quarterback this year. I think he's kind of painted himself into a corner. Now, he could go into this, he could come out again without taking one, and I don't think any of us would be upset about it as long as Geno's still here. But I sense, my gut tells me it's going to happen, right? Now, I'm going to take you back to the podium in Indianapolis again today. And Schneider was asked about what he looks for in the process of scouting quarterbacks and considering them. And here is what he said about that.
The football knowledge, the confidence, the person, spending time with, our connections to other coaches around the National Football League, players that have played with the individual, coaches that have coached the player.
So, connections, players, guys they played with, coaches that have coached them, coached against them. Connections are big with Schneider. He's a people person. He is revered around the league for his relationships with people. You've seen it in some of the biggest trades he's ever made or with guys that he's very close with. Jamal Adams, Joe Douglas, they were very tight. There's other examples of that. We've seen how heavily they place an emphasis on players that play at the Senior Bowl, which is run by Jim Nagy, former member of the scouting staff under Schneider in Seattle. Connections matter to him. So let's talk about connections, right? What did he say there? He said, spending time with other coaches, players who have played with him. Currently on the Seahawks roster, Jackson Smith-Njigba obviously was there when Quinn Ewers was a freshman, as Schneider alluded to after the year that they drafted JSN. Byron Murphy, last year's first-round draft pick, played 2 seasons with Quinn Ewers at Texas. He can tell you what he was like in the locker room on the field, off the field, right? Tyreek Smith. You remember him? 5th-round draft pick out of Ohio State a couple years ago, lost his rookie year to injury. Then he went to the Arizona Cardinals, came back last year on the practice squad, signed to a futures deal, is still on the roster. He played at Ohio State with Quinn Ewers. Can speak to what he was like there as a wide-eyed freshman walking in thinking he was, big man on campus because perfect scouting score. So there's 3 guys right there. Oh, but it gets so much more significant. News came out today, first of all, that Quinn Ewers is fully healthy, right? We know throughout the year that he battled a couple of significant injuries. He had an ankle injury that was so significant that he had a massive custom-made, really high-tech brace on his right ankle, and he played through it. And then he had, I've heard it referenced as a torn oblique muscle. Played through it. I think that's to his credit. There's been a knock on him that he does get dinged up. He's not very durable. Maybe needs to work on his body and get stronger. But he played through it. That has to be to his credit last year, right? You can't imagine a worse injury other than obviously shoulder, arm. For a quarterback, especially a tip of the cap to Bryce Coots, a rotational thrower with a bad oblique. And I think you saw that at times last year when you're watching him, especially what I noticed is on his deep ball, sometimes just the accuracy wasn't there, come up short. I mean, that's got to be really tough when your oblique's torn, right? So he wasn't able to play in the Senior Bowl. And there was some question as to whether he would work out at the combine. And honestly, as much as we've had discussions lately about how we feel about guys opting out of the combine, would not have blamed him. And there were some who felt like they were just expecting him not to participate. Well, today it was announced that he's going to do everything. He's fully healthy. He's gained weight. He's gotten stronger, and he's going to do everything at the combine, all the testing, all the throwing. And furthermore, he's being trained by a former NFL head coach. All these guys have private quarterback coaches, right? Like Jordan Palmer's a big one, Carson's brother. There's a bunch of other ones out there. Davis Mills, I think, is another one that a lot of guys work with. Mike McCarthy is training Quinn Ewers. Mike McCarthy and John Schneider are about as close as it gets. They worked together in Kansas City from 97 and 98. McCarthy was the quarterback's coach there, while Schneider was the director of pro personnel. Then he moved on to Green Bay. Schneider did, where he was general manager Ted Thompson's right-hand man, his top aide, and was heavily involved in the hiring of McCarthy as Packers head coach. To this day, they are very, very close, and Schneider speaks about McCarthy in reverential ways. In fact, there was some buzz, I think we may have even talked about it a little bit on the show here, that when McCarthy was let go in Dallas, when they failed to reach agreement on a new contract, that if he wanted to just kind of step back from being a head coach for a while, that maybe he would have been involved in the Seahawks offensive coordinator search. Seems a little silly in retrospect. I think McCarthy in next year's coaching style will be right back, or cycle will be right back in there and be a guy that there's some demand for. But the fact that he's training Quinn Ewers now, all those other things that I just mentioned, and on top of it now, one of Schneider's closest allies and colleagues and friends in the business is training this guy, working with him every single day. You talk about feedback and a direct line of communication to, hey, what's this kid's work ethic? How's he handling this? Like, how's he approaching this? That's from a guy who's been a long time head coach in the NFL and a play caller in the NFL. Man, that tells me something. A guy who's coached Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Brett Favre. Pretty cool. Now, some of you might not like anything that I'm saying. And I know quarterback prospects just generally are polarizing. People make their decisions on them based on very, very limited information. And once they make their decision about a guy, it seems like it's very, very difficult to change their minds. I think that can be said of most prospects, but there's something about the quarterback position that brings that even more to a head. And with Ewers, like even I've found myself doubting him a little bit more this year. Heading into this season, I've had countless discussions with Michael Thompson of 12th Man Rising. And Michael's going to join me next week to do a little combine review and breakdown. I think we're shooting for Monday on that. We've been talking about Quinn Ewers for quite a while. And it's funny because our conversations about a year ago at this time were, is he going to declare this year? If he does, are the Seahawks going to have a shot at him? Is he going to go too early? Now he's not a first-round pick. I can't really put a finger on why that is. Not a scout, right? Other than it was an inconsistent year. Turned the ball over more often, 12 picks this year to 31 touchdowns. That's his highest pick total. First time he's been in double-digit picks. You have to wonder how much the injury played a part. And the tape is tough to evaluate sometimes because Steve Sarkisian, my goodness, the way he calls a game, like, I don't know. If you're a fan of bubble screens, you love Steve Sarkisian, like screen after screen after screen. In the Georgia game alone, like the first drive is kind of hard to watch in some respect because it's like 8 straight screens. It's like he just emptied the bucket off his screen play sheet. But when you watch Ewers, there's a lot of things that I like and have liked over the years. First of all, in that short game, he just seems very natural. There's an ease to the way he throws the football. He almost always throws off his front foot. He gets rid of the ball so easily. I can't describe it in any other way than that. It looks so comfortable to him, sometimes too comfortable. Like sometimes I wish he'd stick his foot in the ground a little bit and get a little more on it. But then there are times where he throws it and it looks like he's being lackadaisical in how he throws it, but yet it gets to the opposite hash on a line in coverage right on the money. There's work to be done on the accuracy, as there is with every college quarterback, but you see all sorts of throws on his tape down the field. He puts a lot of air on his deep ball, which I really appreciate. Like one of the biggest problems with some of these top-rated quarterbacks as they work through college and get to the pros is they just don't know when to throw the changeup. It's just fastball, 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 right? The Will Levis approach, the Anthony Richardson approach. Ewers, it's almost kind of the opposite. Like sometimes I wish he would just stick his foot in the ground and rip it. He's capable of it, but I think that's to his credit that he understands he doesn't always have to do that. He's got some savvy. I think his ball handling is really well. A lot of RPO stuff and fakes at Texas that Sarkisian asks of him, and he's really good at that. I do see him getting through his progressions. Now, one of the knocks on him is he isn't that athletic, but and I get it. One of the things I like about him as a thrower, he's very light on his feet. Very, very light, comfortable feet. As a runner, the feet look heavy. He just doesn't have that burst, that quickness. But there are examples on tape of the pocket getting really muddy and ugly and him being able to make something out of it, change his arm angle, get rid of the football when a guy's in his face. And in the short game, he's very, very quick and willing to get rid of the ball to the check down the hot route when necessary. So many of these college quarterbacks, when you're trying to evaluate them, you're watching the tape and you're just like, hit the check down. Stop trying to force it downfield. And I think in a Clint Kubiak system where, what have we heard about it, right? One of the things is every single pass play has an escape hatch built into it. It's one of the things Ryan Grubb was not good at. He would call these Shane Waldron-esque slow developing downfield routes, and there'd be no check down available. But as fans, we watch that and we go, Geno holds the ball too long. Well, because he didn't have a hot route. Quinn is really willing to do that. And I think as a young quarterback, especially if you're thrown into the fire, that's a valuable thing to have in your tool belt. Is you don't have to rewire him and program that out of him. Take the check down, take the check down, take the check down. But he's not a check down merchant, if that makes sense. He certainly looks downfield. He wants to hit the big shot. I'm not sitting here saying that Quinn Ewers is the answer, that the Seahawks should draft him and he'll be the quarterback in 2026. He's going to be a franchise quarterback and make Pro Bowls. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he has a chance to be that. And the connections from Schneider to Ewers are legitimate enough that we need to consider that he could be one of the guys high on their board when their turn comes up in the, let's say, third round. Now, everything I've just said, and as bullish as I am on Ewers' upside, I wouldn't be really excited about taking him before the third round. That third round pick, to me, when I'm doing mocks and stuff, that's kind of the sweet spot with this quarterback class. Like heading into the night before you go to bed on day 2, some of those guys, if Tyler Shuck kind of falls to there because he's got some buzz, he's rising. Will Howard, if he's still there, Kyle McCord, that's kind of the sweet spot where you might not want to wait overnight because teams might try to trade up for those guys if they're still on the board. And so any one of those guys really, I think, is worth taking a shot at. I'm just saying that I think John Schneider might have a line drawn to this guy. What do you think? How would you feel if the Seahawks spent their third round pick on Quinn Ewers? Let me know what you think in the comments below. More press conferences tomorrow. Mike McDonald is going to speak. I will react to that as shortly afterwards as I can. And actually, with the schedule tomorrow, I should be able to react to it shortly after he speaks. I think he's scheduled to speak at 10 or 11 Pacific time. So I'll keep an eye out for that. And then we get into the on-field workouts on Thursday. I'll have full reactions with guests and analysis after each of those workouts, heading all the way through the weekend. And of course, they save the best for last as far as the Seahawks are concerned, and probably the rest of the league too. So many GMs today talking about how they need interior offensive line help. That's a whole nother story we're going to talk about on another show. But the offensive linemen finish it off on Sunday. And the quarterbacks, by the way, go Saturday if you want to watch Ewers and all the other guys throw. Still waiting to hear if Cam Ward's going to throw. Haven't heard if Will Howard's going to throw. I sure hope he does, especially after missing the Senior Bowl. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Again, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. All the other ways you can support the channel are listed down below. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks. And thanks again to BetUS for sponsoring this program. We'll see you soon.